I just do whatever I feel on stage, you know. As I always did that.
They said the king was gone, but the truth didn't end with him. On that hot August afternoon in 1977, when the world stopped to mourn Elvis Presley, few knew the story, the reason, the circumstances that surrounded the loss. Behind the music, behind Graceland's iron gates, something darker was playing out: secrets, pressure, and a slow unraveling of the man who changed music forever. This isn't just about how Elvis passed on, it's about why. What really happened to the king of rock and roll is far more tragic and far more shocking than anyone ever imagined. The boy who became the king. In a town where money was little and dreams felt out of reach, a young man walked into a recording studio. People wondered, what did this boy know about music? Elvis knew a lot. In his heart, he carried the songs his mother would sing to him, and all the gospel music he loved from Sunday mornings at church. Life would change for him, even get hard. But there was always music. It was worth a shot. As a boy, Elvis was quiet and polite. He was obedient and kind to everyone, but inside him there burned something wild and wonderful. When he heard music, his whole body wanted to move. He loved gospel, blues, and country music. He loved how sounds in the South blended together like colors swirling in water. When his family moved to Memphis, Tennessee, everything changed. The city was bigger and louder and full of possibilities he had never imagined. It was time to free the spirit within. In the mid-1950s, something incredible happened. Elvis walked into a recording studio. Little did he know that those simple steps would change the world. His voice was different from anything people had heard before. It was smooth like honey, but also rough like gravel. He sang with so much feeling that grown men got tears in their eyes and young people felt their hearts beat faster. He didn't just stand still and sing like other performers. He moved like the music was living inside his body, like he couldn't help himself. Fame came rushing at him like a river breaking through a dam. Suddenly, everyone knew his name. Girls screamed when they saw him. Reporters wanted to talk to him. People who had never cared about music suddenly cared very much. He was on the radio, he was in magazines, he was everywhere all at once. But standing on that stage in Memphis with all those lights and all that noise, Elvis felt something else too. Underneath the excitement and the joy, there was a tiny voice whispering questions he couldn't answer. Would this go on forever? He felt doubts, uncertainties, and fears. More than anything, he felt the weight of his own crown. He shook off those thoughts and smiled that famous smile. The music started and his body moved and the crowd went wild. For now, this moment was enough. This beautiful, bright, impossible moment where a poor boy from Tupelo stood at the center of everything. The future could wait. Tonight he was flying, paying no thought to the dark future that would unfold too soon. Keep watching to know what happened next. Behind the curtains of fame. Colonel Tom Parker was not really a colonel, and his real name was not really Tom Parker. But nobody needed to know that. What they needed to know was that he could turn a talented singer into a gold mine, and that was exactly what he planned to do with Elvis Presley. Parker was a man for details. He saw opportunities where other people saw problems. He understood something important about America in the 1950s. People were hungry for something new, something exciting, something that made them feel alive. Elvis was all of those things wrapped up in one handsome package. When Parker first heard about the young singer from Memphis making waves on a small record label, his mind started working like a calculator. He saw the raw talent, the good looks, the way Elvis moved on stage like electricity running through water. But he also saw something else. He saw someone who needed guidance, someone who could be shaped and molded into something even bigger than he already was. Parker worked fast. He made phone calls, set up meetings, talked numbers with men in offices who wore expensive suits. He negotiated and pushed and maneuvered until he got what he wanted. The deal with RCA Records was his masterpiece. It was the biggest contract anyone had ever heard of for a singer so young and unproven. Other managers might have been scared to ask for so much money. Parker asked for more. Once Elvis signed with RCA, the machine really started humming. Parker scheduled recording sessions and television appearances and concerts that stretched across the country. He decided what songs Elvis would sing, what movies he would make, what clothes he would wear in public. Every decision went through Parker first. He controlled the image, the message, the brand. Elvis Presley was no longer just a person. He was a product, and Parker was determined to sell that product to every corner of America. The touring schedule was brutal. City after city, night after night, Elvis performed until his voice was raspy and his body ached. But the money kept rolling in like a river that never stopped flowing. Parker took his percentage, and he made sure every contract a success. Behind closed doors, Parker made choices that would echo through Elvis's entire life. He turned down opportunities that might have taken Elvis in different directions. International tours that could have expanded his world, movie roles that might have shown his acting range, collaborations with other artists that could have pushed his music somewhere new. Parker said no to all of it if he couldn't control every aspect, if he couldn't guarantee his cut. People whispered that Parker cared more about money than about the young man who made that money possible. Maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't. Parker would have said he was protecting his investment, building an empire, securing a future. He would have said that Elvis needed someone tough making the hard decisions, someone who understood the business side of show business. The pressure of managing the biggest star in the world sat heavy on Parker's shoulders, though he never showed it. Every choice mattered. Every mistake could cost millions. He worked 18-hour days, juggling contracts and demands and the endless needs of a fame machine that never slept. The burden of control was real, even if he had grabbed that control with both hands and refused to let go. Unfortunately, Parker could not make the decisions that would keep the biggest star in the world shining for much longer. Something was coming, and it would change the world for good. Stay with us to find out. The doctor who couldn't say no. Dr. George C. Nicopolis became part of Elvis Presley's world in a way that most doctors never do with their patients. People called him Dr. Nick for short, and eventually he wasn't just a physician who treated Elvis when he got sick. He became part of the inner circle, always close by, always on call, always ready with his medical bag and his prescription pad. At first, it seemed simple enough. Elvis was a performer who worked incredibly hard. His body hurt from all the moving on stage, from the constant travel, from sleeping in strange beds in different cities every few nights. He had trouble sleeping because his mind raced with a million thoughts after each show. The adrenaline from performing in front of thousands of screaming fans didn't just turn off like a light switch. Dr. Nick understood these problems, and he wanted to help. The prescriptions started small and reasonable. Something for pain here, something to help sleep there, maybe a little boost of energy for the grueling schedule that never seemed to end. Dr. Nick told himself he was being careful, that he was monitoring everything, that he knew what he was doing. He had gone to medical school and trained for years. He understood how medications worked in the human body. But Elvis was not like other patients. When Elvis called at 3 in the morning saying he needed something, what was Dr. Nick supposed to do? He couldn't say no to the biggest star in the world. He couldn't tell him to just deal with the pain or the insomnia or the exhaustion. It wasn't that simple. Elvis had people depending on him. Concerts that thousands of fans had bought tickets for. Contracts that had to be honored. The show had to go on, and Dr. Nick had the power to make sure it did. As the years went by, the medications multiplied. Medications for pain, sleep, to wake up, to calm down, to counteract the side effects of other medications. Dr. Nick kept records in his files, tracking what he prescribed and when. The numbers grew larger. The combinations became more complex. In the back of his mind, a small voice whispered warnings that he tried not to hear. He saw Elvis's health declining in ways that scared him. The weight gain and weight loss that happened in cycles. The times when Elvis seemed confused or his words came out slurred. The complaints about his heart racing or feeling strange in his chest. Dr. Nick ran tests and saw concerning results. Elvis's cardiovascular system was under stress. His body was wearing down faster than it should for a man still in his early 40s. Dr. Nick tried to warn Elvis about the risks. He explained how the medications affected the heart, the liver, the brain. He suggested cutting back, finding other ways to manage pain and sleep. But Elvis didn't want to hear it. He wanted solutions that worked right now, that let him keep performing, that helped him feel normal, even though nothing about his life was normal. The conflict tore at Dr. Nick in quiet moments. He was a doctor who had taken an oath to do no harm. Was it harmful to give Elvis the medications that kept him functioning? One thing was clear. If Elvis didn't get the medications from him, he would get it from other doctors who would most likely take advantage of the star. The clock kept ticking. Every prescription written was another minute passing, another choice made, another step down a path that seemed to have no exit. Dr. Nick carried his medical bag and his guilt in equal measure. knowing that caring for Elvis Presley meant living in the uncomfortable space between helping and enabling, between medicine and risk, between what a doctor should do and what seemed impossible not to do. Find out if this decision would save Elvis or destroy him. A falling South Star. Elvis Presley stood in front of the mirror at Graceland and barely recognized the man staring back at him. The face was puffier than it used to be. The famous smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. He was only in his early 40s, but he felt ancient, like he had lived 100 years in the span of 2 decades. The white jumpsuit with all its jewels and sequins hung in the closet waiting for the next show. Just looking at it made him tired. Graceland had become his castle and his prison all at once. The big mansion in Memphis was supposed to be his dream home, the place where a poor boy from Tupelo could finally rest and feel safe. He had bought it for his mama, wanting to give her everything she never had. But she was gone now, had been gone for years, and the house felt too big and too quiet without her. He wandered the rooms at night when sleep wouldn't come, which was most nights. The touring schedule kept grinding on like a machine that nobody knew how to shut off. City after city, arena after arena, the same songs performed for different crowds who all wanted the same thing. They wanted the young Elvis, the dangerous one who moved his hips and made girls scream. They wanted 1956 Elvis, not 1977 Elvis. He tried to give them what they wanted, but his body was betraying him in ways he couldn't control. On stage, he still felt flashes of the old magic. The lights would hit just right and the music would swell, and for a moment he was flying again like he did in Memphis all those years ago. The crowd would roar and he would remember why he fell in love with performing in the first place. But those moments came less often now, buried under the weight of exhaustion and pain and all the medications that were supposed to make everything better, but somehow made everything worse. His friends worried about him, though most of them didn't say it out loud. They saw how he struggled to catch his breath after climbing stairs. They noticed how his hands shook sometimes and how he forgot things he should have remembered. The people closest to him walked on eggshells, afraid to upset him, afraid to tell him the truth that everyone could see. Elvis Presley was falling apart. He knew it too, in the quiet moments when he let himself think about it. His heart felt wrong, beating too fast or too slow, or with strange rhythms that scared him. His body ached in places he didn't know could ache. Getting through a single day felt like running a marathon, but admitting weakness meant the whole thing could come crashing down. The tours, the money, the legend, all of it depended on him being Elvis, and Elvis was supposed to be invincible. In August of 1977, the summer heat pressed down on Memphis like a heavy blanket. Elvis was preparing for another tour, another round of performances in cities that all looked the same. On the 16th day of that month, something inside him finally gave out. His heart, which had been working so hard for so long under so much strain, simply stopped doing what hearts are supposed to do. The medical examiner would later write down cardiac arrhythmia on official papers, a fancy term that meant his heartbeat went wrong. He was 42 years old, still young by any reasonable measure, but the years had not been kind, and the cost of fame had been higher than anyone imagined back when he was just a skinny kid who loved to sing. The boy from Tupelo who became the king had given everything to his crown until there was nothing left to give. As time grew slimmer, Graceland grew quiet, slowly awaiting the tragedy that would immortalize its walls. Keep watching to hear more about this tragedy. The papers that told secrets. The autopsy report sat in a manila folder on a cold metal table. It was just paper and ink, medical terms typed onto forms, but those pages held answers that thousands of people were desperate to know. What really happened to Elvis Presley on that August day? The file knew things that nobody wanted to say out loud. Dr. Jerry Francisco, the medical examiner for Shelby County, stood over the report with his pen in hand. He had performed the examination himself, had seen with his own eyes what was inside the body of the most famous entertainer in the world. Now came the hard part. What would he write down? What would he tell the grieving fans and the curious reporters and the family waiting for answers? The official cause of death went onto the certificate as cardiac arrhythmia. The heart had stopped beating properly. That was true enough. Hearts don't just stop for no reason, especially not in men who were only 42 years old. But cardiac arrhythmia was like saying someone passed on because they stopped breathing. It was technically correct, but it didn't explain the why behind everything. Some of the levels were significant. Some combinations were dangerous. Put together, they painted a picture that nobody wanted to hang on the wall. but the report existed whether anyone wanted to look at it or not. The evidence was right there in the numbers and the chemical names that most people couldn't pronounce. Dr. Francisco made a choice about what to emphasize in his public statements. He talked about the heart problems, about how Elvis had cardiovascular disease that contributed to his death. That was also true. The autopsy had found issues with Elvis's heart that were real and serious. An enlarged heart, problems with the arteries, signs of long-term strain. These were facts written down in black ink, but he spoke less about the other findings. The polypharmacy stayed in the background, mentioned quietly if at all. Years later, other doctors who reviewed the files would say the medications played a bigger role than was publicly acknowledged. They would point to the combinations and the levels and say this was a death caused by many factors working together, not just one simple explanation. The autopsy report became a controversial document, hidden from full public view for decades. Parts of it leaked out over the years in books and investigations and legal battles. Each new revelation added another piece to the puzzle. Each detail suggested that the story told to the world in August 1977 was incomplete, a simplified version of something much more complex. The papers documented everything with clinical precision: the weight of organs, the condition of tissues, the presence of substances that should not have been there in those amounts. The file didn't make judgments or point fingers. It simply recorded what was found, letting the evidence speak in its quiet medical language. Hidden in those pages were uncomfortable truths about prescription medication and the way it was used in Elvis's final years. The report hinted at a system that had failed, at warning signs that were ignored, at a slow decline that everyone close to him must have noticed, but nobody seemed able to stop. The legend of Elvis was bright and shining, but the autopsy report showed the darkness underneath. The manila folder stayed closed to protect a legacy and spare a family more pain, but the papers inside remained unchanged, waiting with their secrets intact, holding the deeper truth about how a king really passed on. As the world wondered, the walls of Graceland screamed with the truth. It was truth too haunting to be kept secret. What was it? The house that remembers everything. Graceland has stood on Highway 51 in Memphis for many years, watching the world change around it while staying frozen in a particular moment of time. The white columns at the front give it a grand appearance, like something from an old Southern story. But Graceland is more than just a mansion. It is a witness to everything that happened within its walls, and those walls have seen things they can never forget. The house first became Elvis's home in 1957, when he was young and rising like a rocket into the sky. He walked through the front door with his mother Gladys, both of them hardly believing that this beautiful place belonged to them. The rooms filled with laughter and music and the smell of home-cooked meals. Gladys decorated with care, choosing colors and furniture that made the big house feel warm. Those were bright days when hope lived in every corner. But houses absorbed the emotions of the people inside them, and Graceland felt the shift when Gladys passed on. The air changed, the hallways grew quieter. Elvis wandered through rooms at strange hours looking for something he could never find again. The house tried to comfort him, but it could only be what it was: wood and brick and glass, unable to bring back the one person who mattered most. As the years passed, Graceland became both sanctuary and prison. Elvis covered the windows with heavy drapes that kept out the Memphis sun. He installed gates and fences to keep the world away. Inside, he created his own universe where day and night had no real meaning. He slept when he was tired and stayed awake when he felt restless, and the house adjusted to his rhythms, even when those rhythms made no sense. The rooms filled with things Elvis bought on impulse: televisions and furniture and decorations that caught his fancy. The jungle room downstairs became famous for its strange style, with green shag carpet on the ceiling and furniture that looked like it belonged in a faraway forest. Every room reflected some part of Elvis's personality, his tastes changing like the seasons, the house absorbing each new phase. Graceland heard everything: the music that played at all hours, the conversations between Elvis and his friends who lived on the property, the worried whispers of people who loved him but didn't know how to help him, the footsteps going up and down the stairs at 3 in the morning, the telephone ringing with business calls and tour schedules and demands that never stopped coming. The house listened and remembered. The bathroom upstairs became part of the story nobody wanted to tell. It was just a room like any other room, with tiles and fixtures and ordinary things. But on August 16, 1977, that bathroom became the place where Elvis Presley's life ended. His body was found there on the floor, the king fallen in the most undignified way possible. Graceland held that terrible secret in its walls, the exact details of those final moments locked away forever. After Elvis passed on, Graceland transformed into something else entirely. It became a shrine where people came from all over the world to feel close to the legend. They walked through the rooms where he lived, touched the things he touched, stood in spaces where his presence still seemed to linger. The house opened its doors to strangers and let them see the life Elvis built, though the full truth stayed hidden in shadows. The mansion sits heavy with memory and meaning. Every room carries the weight of what happened there. The music room remembers joy. The kitchen remembers family meals and late-night snacks. The bedroom remembers sleepless nights and lonely mornings. The bathroom remembers the end. Graceland is atmosphere made solid, a place where you can almost feel time standing still. The decor from the 1970s remains unchanged, like the house is waiting for Elvis to come home. The peacocks still roam the lawn, the gates still bear his name. Visitors leave flowers and notes and tears. The house stands as monument and mystery, holding in its bones the story of a poor boy who became a king, and the tragedy of how that story ended. Graceland knows everything but speaks only in whispers. Stay tuned to find out the reaction of the world to Elvis's death. The song that never ends. Elvis Presley has been gone for decades now, but his voice still fills rooms all over the world. Children who were not even born when he passed on know his songs by heart. His face appears on posters and coffee mugs and pieces of art. The memory of him refuses to fade the way most memories do with time. Instead, it grows stronger, like a river that keeps flowing long after the rain has stopped. The music is what lasts the longest. Those recordings he made in studios across his career captured something real and powerful that transcends time. When you hear him sing, you hear joy and sadness and longing all mixed together. You hear the gospel music from his childhood church and the blues he learned from Beale Street and the country songs his mama loved. He took all those sounds and made them into something entirely his own, something the world had never heard before. Elvis changed popular music in ways that are hard to measure but impossible to deny. Before him, music was divided into strict categories that rarely crossed paths. Black music stayed separate from white music. Country stayed away from rhythm and blues. Elvis broke down those walls without even trying. He just sang what he loved and moved the way the music made him want to move. In doing so, he opened doors for every artist who came after him. The numbers tell part of the story. Millions and millions of records sold across the world. Hit songs that topped charts and stayed there for weeks. Movies that filled theaters even when critics said they were silly. But numbers cannot capture the feeling people got when they first heard his voice or saw him perform. That feeling changed lives and inspired dreams and made people believe that anything was possible. The fans are the ones who keep his memory alive in the most meaningful way. They gather at Graceland every year on the anniversary of his death, holding candles and singing his songs in the darkness. They share stories about what Elvis meant to them, how his music helped them through hard times or brought them joy when they needed it most. Some of them never met him, but they feel connected to him anyway, as if his story is somehow part of their own. But the legacy is complicated because the truth is complicated. Elvis was brilliant and talented and kind. He was also troubled and struggling and human. He made choices that hurt himself and worried the people who loved him. He lived under pressure that few people could understand or survive. His story contains both inspiration and warning, triumph and tragedy, all woven together. We learn from his life that talent alone is not enough to save someone, that fame can be a blessing and a curse, that the people around celebrities have responsibility too, to speak truth even when it is uncomfortable, to protect rather than enable. We learn that prescription medications can be dangerous even when they come from doctors, that asking for help is not weakness, that nobody, no matter how legendary, is invincible. Elvis's story asks us to think about how we treat our heroes. Do we put them on pedestals so high that they cannot breathe? Do we demand so much from them that they break under the weight? Do we look away from warning signs because we want the show to continue? These are questions worth asking, not just about Elvis, but about everyone we admire. What stays behind after all the analysis and investigation and reflection is something simple and profound. Elvis Presley was a boy from Mississippi who loved music with his whole heart. He shared that love with the world, and the world loved him back. His voice brought happiness to millions of people. His story, with all its brightness and darkness, reminds us that life is precious and fragile and short. Tell us what you think. Does the legacy of the King of Rock and Roll still live on despite the many years that have passed? Share your thoughts below. And if this tale stirred something in you, share with us in the comment. Let the story of life and legends encourage us to live our best moments.